You've probably imagined refusing an arranged marriage meant one thing everywhere: swift, brutal punishment. The answer depends on which ancient world you were born into. Historians who study ancient marriage records found something the assumption misses completely. Punishment for refusal varied wildly, not by era, but by role. Now here's where it gets interesting. Some societies gave women a real, respected alternative path. Most societies simply did not, and that gap changed everything. Most people assume the outcome depended on how strict a culture was overall. Actually, it depended on one specific thing: whether an accepted exit existed. So let's tour the ancient world and find out what happened, culture by culture, to anyone who dared to say no to an arranged marriage. In small Paleolithic bands, marriage often meant a formal alliance between two families, arranged by elders to strengthen hunting partnerships and share scarce resources. Elders believed a broken match could curse the whole band's next hunt, so refusal wasn't treated as personal, it was treated as a shared danger. Archaeologists studying small hunter-gatherer bands today find refusal usually meant simply leaving to join a neighboring group, since bands were rarely larger than 50 people. Picture the awkward walk of shame across open grassland to a rival band, carrying your belongings and hoping they weren't annoyed at your old one. Imagine this. That option, simply walking to another camp, existed because bands were small and mobile. Farming villages would soon make that option far harder. In ancient Babylon, marriage contracts were written and legally binding, with fathers negotiating dowries and bride prices recorded formally on clay tablets before any wedding. Babylonians believed a broken marriage contract offended the gods overseeing the household, so refusal risked more than family anger. It risked real divine disfavor. Surviving Babylonian legal tablets describe cases where a bride's family could return the dowry to formally cancel a match, a real recorded legal exit. Here's the detail nobody expects. Canceling a marriage contract in Babylon involved almost as much paperwork as the wedding itself, just with fewer celebrations. So a legal exit existed here, on paper. Whether an ordinary family could actually afford to use it was an entirely different question. Ancient Egyptian, marriage functioned as a civil agreement rather than a religious one, and women held real legal standing to negotiate or reject a match. Egyptians believed a woman's word carried real weight before the law, so a marriage contract typically listed exactly what happened if either side backed out. Surviving Egyptian, marriage contracts include specific financial penalties for a husband who abandoned his wife. Proof women negotiated real protection before agreeing to marry. Turns out ancient Egyptian brides basically invented the prenuptial agreement, several thousand years before anyone thought to charge lawyers for the paperwork. Here's what actually happened next. Once you leave the Nile behind and step into the very different world of ancient Greek city-states. In classical Athens, a woman's father or male guardian, called her kyrios, arranged marriage entirely, and formal legal refusal from the bride was rarely recognized. Athenians believed family honor mattered more than personal preference, so open refusal risked shaming the entire household in front of the whole community. One accepted path did exist. Serving as a priestess at a major sanctuary, such as Delphi, could mean avoiding marriage entirely with genuine social respect. Becoming the most famous oracle in the ancient Mediterranean was apparently an easier career path than simply telling your father no thank you. This is where the story splits, because right next door, Sparta built an entirely different relationship between women, marriage, and personal choice. Spartan women could own and inherit property independently, giving them real leverage in marriage negotiations that women in Athens simply did not have. Spartans believed strong, healthy mothers produced strong soldiers, so a woman's physical fitness and independence were valued more than quiet obedience to a match. Some ancient sources describe Spartan marriage beginning with a ritual mock capture, a symbolic act rather than an actual abduction, before the couple lived together. Nothing says romance quite like a scripted kidnapping ceremony that both families had already fully approved and scheduled weeks in advance. But there's a catch further west. because Rome built its own strange, powerful exception to the marriage rule for a very select group of women. In ancient Rome, 6 chosen Vestal virgins served the state instead of marrying, tending a sacred flame in exchange for extraordinary legal independence. Romans believed the sacred flame's survival protected the entire city, so Vestals were treated as essential rather than as women who had simply opted out. Vestal virgins could own property, testify in court, and even pardon condemned prisoners simply by crossing their path, privileges no married Roman woman held. Most ancient people had to accept whatever match their family arranged. Vestals got legal superpowers and a permanent excuse to skip every family wedding. Now here's the twist most people never hear, because the same pattern of an accepted, respected exit shows up far to the east in China. In Han Dynasty China, Confucian duty placed enormous weight on obeying parents, and a daughter refusing an arranged marriage risked severe, lasting family dishonor. Confucian tradition held that a family's harmony depended on each member accepting their assigned role, making open refusal feel like a threat to everyone. Historical records describe daughters in some periods choosing lifelong Taoist or Buddhist religious devotion, specifically to escape a marriage they could not otherwise refuse. Joining a remote mountain temple for the rest of your life was, remarkably, still considered the easier option by a lot of people. And once you know this, everything else makes more sense, because far south along the Nile, Kush built its own version of female independence. In the kingdom of Kush, ruling queens called Kandakes governed independently, and elite women in general held property rights unusually strong for the ancient world. Kushite tradition treated a powerful, independent queen as proof the gods favored the kingdom, giving elite women religious cover for real political authority. Queen Amanirenas reportedly negotiated directly with Roman envoys as an equal, a level of independent authority most ancient brides never got close to. It's genuinely hard to force a marriage onto a queen who currently has an entire Roman legion quietly reconsidering its life choices. But that was not easy for everyone in Kush, only for the elite, and across the ocean, the Maya built their own very different system. Among the ancient Maya, marriage was frequently arranged by professional matchmakers, and refusal without a serious reason could bring real shame onto both families. Maya tradition held that a matched couple's harmony reflected cosmic balance, so a broken match was treated as more than a simple personal disagreement. Some historians believe certain Maya women could reject a proposed match if a matchmaker's fee remained unpaid, though the surviving evidence stays genuinely limited. Occasionally, the simplest escape from an unwanted arranged marriage was apparently just refusing to pay the matchmaker their well-earned commission. And this is where it gets uncomfortable again, because the neighboring Aztec Empire treated a refused match very differently, with far higher stakes involved. In the Aztec Empire, professional matchmakers called Cihuatlanc formally arranged marriages, and open refusal risked serious, lasting shame for the entire extended family. Aztecs believed marriage secured a household's place within a larger web of social and religious obligation, so refusal threatened that entire delicate structure. One recognized alternative existed. Devoting a daughter to temple service allowed a family to avoid marriage arrangements while still keeping their social standing intact. Committing to a lifetime of temple duties apparently ranked as socially acceptable, while simply saying no to your matchmaker somehow did not. Now consider what this really meant across an entire ocean, because Viking Age Scandinavia handed women something most cultures on this tour never did. In Viking Age Scandinavia, women held a genuine legal right to initiate divorce, giving them real recourse even after an arranged marriage had already begun. Norse law codes held that mistreatment or a broken agreement justified ending a marriage, treating a woman's complaint as a legitimate legal matter. Surviving Norse legal records describe women reclaiming their dowries and property after a divorce, a formal financial protection rare elsewhere on this entire tour. Apparently, Viking women could just leave, take their belongings, and go, which sounds significantly less dramatic than most Viking stories usually promise. Turns out, The truth is even stranger back across the channel, because Iron Age Celtic Britain built its own distinct relationship with women's status. Roman writers describe Iron Age Celtic Britain as a society where some women held real political and military authority, unusual by Mediterranean standards. Some historians believe Celtic tribal law recognized women's property rights independently of marriage, though direct written Celtic sources on this remain genuinely scarce. Queen Boudica reportedly led an armed rebellion against Rome itself, evidence that at least some Celtic women commanded serious, undeniable political and military power. Refusing an arranged marriage is one thing. Refusing an entire empire is a considerably bigger flex, and Boudica apparently went straight for the second option. Somewhere along the way, someone figured this out on the other side of the world too, because Vedic India developed its own remarkable exception. In Vedic era India, arranged marriage was standard practice, but ancient texts also describe a swayamvara, a formal ceremony where a woman chose her own husband. Some traditions held that a swayamvara let the gods themselves guide a woman's choice, giving her decision genuine religious authority rather than personal defiance. Epic texts describe suitors competing in contests of skill or strength for the right to be chosen, turning the woman's decision into the main event. Somewhere a group of ancient suitors trained for months, only to watch the whole match get decided by one confident woman's opinion. Here's the part historians still argue about, since the swayamvara appears mainly in epic literature, and how common the real practice actually was stays debated. In early Japanese clan society, marriages were frequently arranged to secure political alliances between powerful families, much like in many other ancient civilizations. Tradition held that a daughter's marriage reflected directly on her family's honor and standing, making a public refusal a serious, carefully considered decision. Some historical accounts describe noblewomen retreating to religious life at a temple as a recognized, respectable way to avoid an unwanted political marriage. Choosing a quiet lifetime of prayer and reflection was, once again, apparently an easier sell than an awkward conversation with your own father. One region remains on this tour, out across the open Pacific, where chiefly alliance and marriage worked by an entirely different set of rules. Among Polynesian chiefly families, marriage frequently sealed political alliances between islands, and a chief's daughter carried real strategic weight in any negotiation. Tradition held that a chiefly marriage carried the mana, or spiritual power, of both families, so refusal risked disrupting far more than one household. Oral histories describe some high-ranking women negotiating their own marriage terms directly with rival chiefs, treated as genuine diplomats rather than passive participants. Turns out being born into the right chiefly family occasionally meant showing up to your own marriage negotiation and simply running the whole meeting. But that's not the wild part. Line up every stop on this tour side by side, and one single pattern connects every single exception. Every accepted exit on this tour, priestess, vestal, temple devotee, queen, required one specific thing, a role that society already recognized as legitimate. Where no such role existed, refusal usually meant disownment, lasting shame, or in the harshest documented cases, real and serious personal danger. So the honest answer to what happened if you refused was never one single outcome. It depended on whether your culture built you a door. And that door, when it existed, usually came from religion, not rebellion, which is the part of this story most people never expect. Here's the actual twist. Refusing marriage didn't only lead downward. In the right religious role, it could lead to more power than marriage ever offered. Vestal virgins outranked most married Roman women. Priestesses at Delphi shaped the decisions of kings. The exit wasn't always a downgrade, it was an upgrade. So refusing an arranged marriage was never one universal story of doom. It was a question of exactly which ancient door happened to be open. And for most ordinary people, with no religious role and no royal blood, that door never existed, and refusal stayed as risky as you'd assume. Think about what that really means. Whether refusal was survivable or catastrophic depended less on courage and more on which world you'd been born into. You've probably imagined refusing an arranged marriage meant one thing everywhere. Now you know the answer was always the same question: which door was open?